Hello everyone and welcome, and thank you for joining us today on our Apprenticeships in Surveying webinar. We're lucky enough to be joined today by our speakers Stuart, Earl and Cara Thompson, and they'll discuss and debate how you support a surveying apprentice in the construction industry. They'll look at how this works in real life, what the common pitfalls are for both employer and employee, whether this is the easy option, what you can do to support apprentices, whether education promotes this route, what potential placements would look like, and also whether surveyors need to be qualified. So for those of you who don't know Stuart and Cara, I was just touching base with Stuart before we joined, and I have got an intro for him, but I think he'll add to it. So Stuart joined as a non-cognate, so he's got with a geography degree, so he's got a lot of experience pre-apprenticeships. And then he qualified with the RICS back in 1995. And ever since, he's been really involved in helping people attain a relevant professional qualification. He provides support through the RICS APC Mentor Scheme, and he's an RICS APC Chair of Assessors. Stuart, did you want to add something at this point?
No, but I just think when I joined, I did a part-time degree, so I have a lot of empathy and understanding with people in the current age, particularly around the apprenticeships, in the demands of both studying, building up your APC experience, but also building up and working and developing your career at the same time. And again, that's not something that maybe all line managers have been familiar with, because some would have done a more traditional route of going to university first and then starting work. So it's an experience that's helped me in the mentoring and coaching that I've given people over the years. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks Stuart. And then Cara's recently become a director at Trebes Consulting, where she joined as an apprentice. So she's got some really personal insights into the experience, and no doubt will be sharing these throughout the session. She holds a first-class BSc in quantity surveying and commercial management, and she's also an NEC4 Accredited Project Manager, having experience working with both clients and contractors. So I think we've got some great speakers here that will really give us some great insights into the apprenticeship route. So just before I do hand over to Stuart and Cara, a small amount of housekeeping. I think usually we ask you to add your questions to reach back, but actually Cara and Stuart are more than happy for you to add your questions into the chat panel. We'll try to answer as many as possible. If we don't have time, we will move them across onto Reachback and continue the discussion there. But also Stuart's kindly agreed to host a separate Q&A session if we need one. So watch this space. We'll get the details of that out to you if needed. Just in case you didn't get the link to Reachback, here we go. There's the link here. And that's pretty much it from me. So I will now hand over to Cara.
Thank you.
Hi, Cara.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to start off by sort of running through what an apprenticeship is and who can go through the process. So you might be aware that an apprenticeship is essentially working alongside studying. In the short, working in a real life environment, working on real projects, gaining real good experience on the job, as well as studying for a academic qualification and potentially a professional qualification alongside it. I think there's a common misconception that apprenticeships are only open to school leavers. They are open to people from age 16. However, you could be an apprentice at any age. If you change careers, for example, or you want to upskill, you've been working in the industry but haven't gained that professional qualification or academic qualification, then there's nothing to stop you applying for an apprenticeship and going down that route. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the structure of an apprenticeship, typically 5 years, part-time alongside working. This slide specifically talks about the degree apprenticeships, so open to people from school or college sixth form leavers. There's two different types, generally speaking, that are offered by universities. Most commonly, you've got the sort of focused pathway structures where there are topics centered around the pathway that you're on to study right from the get-go, right from year 1 right through to year 5, which is really beneficial to being in the workplace, and you can put that theory into practice. There are still some degrees that focus more on generic topics in the first couple of years, which it can be a bit less beneficial if you are working in the workplace, because it may mean that the employer has to support that apprenticeship a little more had they been on the different degree offered by other universities. It's not to say that they're bad, just that they're different, and there may be that upfront support that's a little bit more required from the employer. In terms of off-the-job learning, an apprentice is required to spend 20% of their working time studying. And what that means is, even when the apprentice is on leave from university, you know, they're in the summer, they have a requirement to spend that 20% of their time studying. That could be through CPD, that could be through many means, but there is that requirement for the employer to give that time to the apprentice, to spend that time wisely doing studying to support their working practice. In terms of the relevant professional qualification, you, as an apprentice on a degree course, you have the opportunity to gain a professional qualification alongside studying. And what that means is, generally speaking, over the last couple of years of the degree, you would overlap your APC process with your studying and working. So you'll be recording your working, what you're doing at work in your diary, with the aim within a year after completing your degree to also complete your APC and become a chartered surveyor. I think that brings that slide to a close, so I'll move on and hand over to Stuart.
Thank you, Cara. So I just wanted to touch upon initially some of the differences between, if you like, the more traditional routes into our profession compared with the apprenticeship. And as I said in my introduction, there'll be plenty of senior managers and senior people in the industry who would have followed the more traditional route, which may have been kicked off by doing a 3-year full-time undergraduate route, or in some cases that would have had a sandwich year, you know, so a year out in industry, so that becomes 4. Or people who've done a part-time degree course. That includes people like myself who came in as non-cognates. We then saw the development of an alternative route in for the non-cognate, so people coming in to do a master's course, which is typically 1 year full-time or 2-year part-time. But a lot of the traditional approach is very much get your academic qualification first, and then we'll focus on your 2-year sort of post-qualification experience to get you qualified. The apprenticeship route has developed out of a whole series of service sectors that have looked to get people back into education, or basically to provide them with the opportunity to, if you like, earn and learn at the same time. So the apprenticeship model, as Cara's touched upon, it is slightly different because there's a lot more focus on not only attaining a relevant academic qualification, but basically the completion of the apprenticeship is marked by someone attaining a relevant professional qualification, which in some ways is very good, because we shouldn't just be focusing on teaching people the theory. It's how do you put that theory into practice, so you're beginning to learn how to do it, and eventually giving the right advice to your clients. Next slide, please. So I've been dealing with the apprenticeships ever since they've started. I've listed some of the common pitfalls that I've seen, particularly from the employer and the apprentice side. A lot of employers have taken advantage of the apprenticeship route. So in some cases, they are paying the apprenticeship levy, so they're using the levy to fund the courses. If you're not paying into the levy, you'll find actually that the opportunity currently is that the government actually fund 95% of the place. So lots of employers who've traditionally funded part-time education have been using this route, but without realising that there are some distinct differences. The first one, as Cara's touched upon, is the off-the-job learning requirements. I come across employers whose attitude to the apprentice is, oh, well, you know, university's not on there for, I'm going to get you 5 days a week. It doesn't work like that. And the point is that this off-the-job learning requirement has to be recorded. So not only do you have to do it, it has to be recorded because it's part of the assessment. Some employers also missing the point that it's not about study first, then we'll get you qualified. So they're missing the opportunity of and not providing a sort of structured experience and a structured learning pathway for the apprentice. And in some cases, I do still come across an awful lot of employers, partly driven because they don't actually have the qualification, but they don't actually understand the endpoint assessment. And in our case, the endpoint assessment is sitting and passing the APC if you're a chartered surveyor. Then from the apprenticeship point of view, again, you know, apprentices are still relatively new, although they've been around since 2017. But, you know, a lot of people compare, you know, my friends at school, it's, you know, what they're doing. This is something totally different. They don't necessarily realise that actually over and above going to college that actually you need to study and read around. So it's finding that space and that time in your general work-life balance to do that studying, trying to balance up between the need to attain your academic qualification, but at the same time do your self-study and prepare for the APC, and at the same time be a good contributor to the work and the service that you're providing in the office, because that's effectively what's paying your salary. They miss the opportunity to attain good CPD. It's a bit sort of like, oh, well, just something and everything will help, rather than, well, actually, maybe I should be expanding my knowledge, so I'm working on this area. So if you, like, you mentioned that Cara's got NEC experience, so if you're working on a contract, maybe you should be reading the contract and learning more about it. So you're not just learning it on the job, but you're also adding to your knowledge. And the advice I've often given to APC candidates is that, you know, regardless of which course you're doing, you are never physically going to get enough level 1 based knowledge. So you need to study beyond the course demands. And actually, when your course stops, you carry on studying. And the better APC candidates that I've dealt with over the years are the ones who've realised that actually I do need to read beyond what my initial course has taught me. And the final bit, that some apprentices are sort of very reliant on their employer, but not necessarily reflecting on whether they are building up the right breadth and depth of experience. Next slide, please. And I think I hand back to Cara on this one.
Stuart, just before we move on, and sorry, Cara, just to interrupt you there, are there any qualifications or prerequisites that are typically required for any aspiring surveying apprentices out there?
I'm aware that you've got to have a minimum standard in maths and English, as well as the requirements that you attain at your A levels. I'm showing my language. I know they're called A2s now, but A levels to get on your degree course. So I am aware that outside of the funding that's provided by the apprenticeship levy or by the government, some apprentices are required to get up their English and or math standards in order to do that. But other than that, it's almost like you're applying for a degree. The other prerequisite for an apprenticeship course is that you can't get on the course unless you've been offered a job. Because that's the point of it. So you need to seek out an employer that's willing to support you through the apprenticeship approach.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously this slide is about my viewpoint of the apprenticeship process. So just to give a little bit more background to myself, so I started my journey to be a QS in 2016. So I initially started on a part-time degree, not on a specific apprenticeship degree. I was then transferred onto the apprenticeship degree in 2017 when they came out. So I was literally one of the first cohorts to go through the process. I really loved the experience of being able to be in the workplace, earning a salary, and studying alongside it. Going to university full time just wasn't for me. I didn't see that it was going to be something that I'd enjoy, and I ultimately didn't see what the end goal would be had I done that. So this really helped me have a structured and a goal to work towards. So I really enjoyed having the balance of the two, and I hope that it's made me a more well-rounded individual as a quantity surveyor by doing both at the same time. Yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it. The only thing that I felt that I could have benefited from more, and as I said, I was one of the first cohorts to go through this, so I hope that things have moved on a little bit since then, but we were struggling to have structured support from the university on the APC process. When I was going through it, there was, the odd session here and there to touch base, are you doing okay type thing, but no real support onto, next steps and like really pushing you to do it. So for me, unfortunately, I'm still not chartered. I've let that slide a little because as you progress in your career, you become more relied upon, your workload becomes larger, and it becomes progressively more difficult to balance all three aspects of your apprenticeship. And if I'm not being held accountable, then obviously it's the one that slips to one side, unfortunately. If I had my time again, I would make sure that I prioritised getting my APC done much earlier. Having it overlap those last 2 years of university would have helped me massively now. Like I say, being a director of a company and having younger members of staff that rely on my support and things like that, it limits your time. It's great experience, but it would have been a much easier process to go through had I done it the way it was envisaged to be done. So overall, great experience. I'm hoping the APC process is a bit more drilled into the university experience, and the support from the uni is a little bit more structured now. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed being an apprentice, and I'd definitely do it again. I think that's what my slide done, Deb.
That's good news. Yeah, I was just going to ask you there actually, Cara. So how do you think completing an apprenticeship in surveying impacts on an individual's career prospects and job opportunities? Obviously for you it's worked out really well. Do you think that's quite a common theme we see across the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think years ago it probably wasn't such a big thing to have an academic qualification to be a quantity surveyor. I think generally speaking, people did find the career by falling into it as a junior member of staff, and they learn on the job only. But certainly now I think it's standards just get higher, and it certainly supports growing in your career. I'm in the back of my mind thinking about, well, do I then take on a master's at some stage, that continuing that professional development, and I wouldn't be able to do that had I not done the undergrad.
Brilliant, thank you.
No worries.
So let's look at preparing for the APC, which for many of us surveyors is the endpoint assessment. And again, just picking up on Cara's theme, this is an area where I think we need to continue to work closely with universities. And I've often said that I find too much of the APC advice is very much focused on the process. And yes, there is a process, but the process is not the be all and end all. So this is a summary of some of the advice I typically give people. So, again, when you're starting out on any professional qualification route, it's important to understand the route and how you're going to be assessed on route, and what's required. So for many people, that includes keeping a diary of experience. It's maintaining your CPD records over and above, and going to a course part-time only contributes to 50% of that. Many people don't realise that, so wrongly record their hours. But the APC is split into two levels. So we have the specific and the generic pathway guides, and then you've got the pathway guides specific to the route that you're going through. And I coincidentally actually co-wrote the QS pathway guide, so I know that quite intimately, and all the additional advice and guidance that's in there please use it, and actually other pathways can use a lot of the generic advice as well. It's also important that the person that's supporting you, your line manager, which in the APC parlance is the counsellor, actually understands the process that's required. It's amazing the number of people I come across, people who did the old test of professional competence, TPC, going, I don't know about the new route. And it's like, well, as a chartered surveyor, you're required to know about, what the qualification requirements are, and if you like, the standards that are needed to do. And it's important that you also build up that experience. And although we've said that, typically a lot of courses focus on, I think some courses have fallen into the trap of just focusing on a typical 5-year part-time apprenticeship on the last 2 years, because that's the minimum that's required. I'd say certainly from 3 years you should be looking at it in a bit more earnest, but maybe even from day one, because you're trying to build up both a breadth of experience across a whole range of topics, and then hopefully in that journey of building up your experience, you'll get time to actually, if you like, deep dive into a topic so you fully understand it and explain it. And that needs to be planned. And actually, if you're working for an organisation where there are potential gaps in your employer's ability to provide you that experience, then maybe you need to reach out to other firms where they can offer you that experience, but in turn you can offer experience to them that they can't get. I've had to have some sort of very frank discussions with people going, well, I know you work for this firm, and I know you don't, for example, do pre-contract, just a bit of an extreme example, but the RICS, when you go up for the assessment, don't make any allowances for you. They expect you to have had good experience pre-contract, good experience post-contract. It's as simple as that. And ideally across a range of projects, a range of contracts, a range of clients, it's almost like building up your portfolio of experience. The off-the-job learning requirements, I think, is really important. And what I've said to 1 or 2 firms and candidates who I've been supporting is actually, particularly the discussions I've had with the employers, rather than look at it as, what do you mean that I'm only getting them working 4 days a week? It's like, well, actually, maybe you should use the opportunity to use your apprentices to start to create CPD for your own organisation. Maybe you should look at the opportunity that if you're gathering information for CPD, then maybe you store it somewhere that the whole business can then start to refer to it. A classic case in point is as and when contracts changed, use your apprentices to do the studying and then do some CPD talks internally to the rest of the firm saying, oh, right, the JCT has changed, this is how it's changed, or something like that. As I mentioned also, it's important, and I've said this to candidates, you need to continue the self-study. I use a percentage. These are my percentages, and I don't wish to offend any university, but I broadly say that if you've done an undergraduate course, in my mind, I think you probably learnt about 65% of what you need to learn in terms of getting your base knowledge ready for the APC, so you need to continue doing it. That would apply whether you're doing, full-time degree, part-time degree, standard route, apprenticeship route. If you've done a master's course, I say to people, I think you're lucky that if you've done 35%, and that is not a criticism at the university. It's just a simple fact that if you've gone to university for 5 years, you've done 5 years of studying. If you've gone to do a 2 years master's, you've only done 2 years studying. So you've done 60% less studying. So you're all trying to get to that same point. And the better and the best candidates I deal with are the ones that heed my advice and do this self-study further and go beyond the demands of the course, and then when the course is finished, carrying on learning. It's really, really important. And then going back to the work experience, we're looking at particularly your ability to convert your theory into practice. So in APC, we're talking about level 2. So you're getting experience in doing, and then you can do the doing with little or no minimal supervision by the time you come up for your assessment. And then eventually, as Cara's experienced in her career, you move from not just doing, but also sitting opposite clients and consultants and giving them advice. And I need to remind people that particularly if you're looking at the QS pathway guide, our core competencies, you have to achieve level 3. So you have to give good, solid evidence and provide evidence and talk evidence that you can actually give reasoned advice. And last but not least, there's lots of help out there now. It's mentioned that I'm part of the RICS Mentor Scheme, but also Lionheart now support apprentices and APC people, and also there are some, there are third-party providers out there as well, some of whom have got some great collateral and some great tools out there. I work for one of them. I'm not going to specifically plug them, but one of the organisations that I work for has a really good online My APC diary. Some of you might recognise the name, but it's your ability to record your stuff from day one, long before the RICS comes along and says, can you record it? And I said, I think the sooner you engage with recording your experience and keeping an eye on your experience, so am I doing a bit of everything, that will help you become that rounded surveyor that will help you then pass your APC assessment first time. And I'm going to hand you back to Cara for our final slide.
Thank you. So, key question really, is an apprenticeship for you or your business? Hopefully we've just covered a lot of things that have to be considered and thought about before you make that decision. It's, like it says on the slide, potentially a 6+ year commitment. It's not a quick process. It requires engagement throughout, and there is that, again, that commitment of the 20% throughout the 5 years requirement to support the apprentice, and that's the huge thing that employers misunderstand. I think employers need to consider obviously, if they're trying to grow their business, then this is probably a perfect way to. Hopefully you're going to gain a well-rounded junior person that potentially would hopefully stay with your business. If you're investing time into that person, the likelihood is that they're going to stick around. If they can see progression within your organisation and have that support, then why would they go elsewhere? Speaking from my own point of view, at my business, Trebes Consulting, I was an apprentice, and we have an apprentice literally starting tomorrow on her apprenticeship journey. So we certainly think, even as a small business, that it's something that aids us. It works. Clients like seeing junior members. Clients like having a senior member supported by a junior member who's got that structured training as well. And we really believe in it. I've loved it. We've enjoyed being part of the process as a business. So yeah, it's just something that really just needs to be fully understood before you make that commitment, because it's not short term. Is there anything you'd like to add, Stuart?
Well, yeah, I was just going to add, actually, for the employers in the room, we need to learn the lessons from the past. So if you go back to the recession of the 90s, some of the consequences of that really deep, hard recession was that a lot of graduates came out from the surveying courses that couldn't get jobs. And there was a 2-3 year period of people just not getting jobs, but we also had a lot of people in that age bracket that also left the industry because of the uncertainty, because of being made redundant. And do you know what? That gap in people coming through, which probably went a good 3, 4, 5 years, has been felt through the industry all the way through. So I'm of that generation, but there is a gap in people at my age who'd left the industry. Now we need to learn this lesson. I've recently heard of 1 or 2 employers who are, particularly from the SMEs, interested in the apprenticeship route, particularly because the government will fund 95% of the apprenticeship. And it's like, but do you mean I've got to employ somebody for 6 years and pay them a salary? Yeah, but then the point is, do you want to develop that talent, or do you want to rely on somebody else to develop them? I've often, if you're a football fan, and I'm not necessarily a Manchester United fan, I've often used the Manchester United Academy of the 90s as a good example of developing your own talent, because the side that developed and then did really well under Sir Alex Ferguson were the people that came up through their youth academies, the likes of Beckham and Scholes and Giggs. If you're familiar with those players, I mean, they're retired now, but they were all developed and they were a product of Manchester United's development scheme. Yes, you buy in people as well to develop and supplement it, but there is nothing like developing people that that you can trust. They know the way you work, they know what your company ethos is, they know the ethics and standards that you're trying to work to. You're not necessarily assured of that by getting it from somewhere else. But as an industry, and certainly as employers, we should continue to commit to attract people into our profession, because we're constantly sitting here going, we don't have enough surveyors. And some of this goes back to these periods of recession where we turn off the recruitment and the training tap because it's a short-term fix to save money, and then we pay the consequences down the line. So it's, as Cara said, it's not something that should be entered into lightly, but if you go with your eyes wide open and look at the benefits rather than focusing on all the negatives, then I think it's definitely the way forward. And I like the idea of, we're not just focusing on giving people a degree or a master's. This is about getting people, through a period of structured experience and learning, getting them qualified in good time so they become a good asset and an ambassador both for the firm and the profession as a whole. Thank you. So I think we're on to our open question time, unless we want to add anything else.
I was just going to ask a couple of questions there, actually, Stuart. We haven't had any come through from the people listening, but I was just thinking back on my time at, in the RICS. We were always keen to promote diversity and inclusion, and I just wondered, do you think, how can the surveying industry promote diversity and inclusion within the programs, and do you think there are any steps being taken to achieve it?
Well, I think the apprenticeships are a contributor to that, because you're both creating job opportunities, but you're not committing people to necessarily have to fund a university education and come out with a student debt and then try and find a job and live with that student debt. So I'm increasingly coming across more people that who initially would have been put off by university because it's, I don't want a student loan, I can't afford the accommodation, to actually, this is all going to get paid for me. Yes, I suppose the only thing that you're missing out is the university experience, but again, that is not for everyone, and not everyone can afford it. And I think the sad fact, the way that university fees and university accommodation is going, it is pushing down the road to who can afford it, and that begins to then prejudice against people, because not everyone can afford it, and not everyone wants to come out with the debt. So I think it's helping enormously in terms of opening up those opportunities.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
And hopefully we'll see.
I was just going to say that I echo what Stuart said around, not wanting to come out of university with that huge debt hanging over your shoulders. That was the main thing for me, choosing to go down the route that I did. I know it's, people are like, oh, well, you never really pay it back or whatever, but it's a scary, daunting thing when you're 18 years old. And I think for me, in terms of driving and supporting diversity in the industry, it goes back to schools for me, or colleges and people in their A levels. Construction was never talked about as a career opportunity for me at school. Never even talked about. That was geared at boys, wanting to become a joiner or a builder or whatever. And I think, if you get those roots down early, then it opens people's eyes massively.
I think the other opportunity as well is that if you can get this balance right, so if you can get this balance in terms of studying for your degree, doing, learning how to work properly and understanding what it is to work in an office, and at the same time developing, that gives you a lot of life skills and career skills that you can carry forward for the rest of your working life. And even if you don't stay in surveying, it just makes you super organized.
Absolutely.
Dare I show my cynicism at certain courses where you turn up and you get 15% of your degree because you turn up to your course lectures. Well, that's not teaching you a lot, and you've only got 7 hours of lectures a week and not a lot. It's like, well, what are you learning as a sort of work life skill going forward? And I said, people who I deal with that get this balance right turn out to be very, very capable surveyors, people that I want to employ, people that I want to entrust to, because they've developed these life skills early. But in some ways, particularly with the apprenticeship, we're seeing people who've made that lifestyle choice. So I see more degree of commitment, as opposed to somebody went to university because they quite fancied just drinking for 3 years and playing a bit of sport, and then they drifted out and it's like, maybe I want to be a surveyor. Some of those people don't necessarily have the focus that would help them. Most apprentices that I see are definitely, I'm doing this because this is the choice I've made, and therefore I'm gonna put that commitment in.
Excellent. I guess as well that sort of like goes back as well to that whole how important it is for a mentorship within your surveying apprenticeship. I think it's getting that experience from others who have passed their APC, etc. Do you think that will help enhance their learning experience?
I think so, but empathy is an important skill here, and particularly line managers. And again, some of our line managers needs to recognise that this is not the route that they were used to. And it's important to try and understand that journey that your candidates are going through. If you've been through something similar, so I've been through something similar, Cara's been through something similar. So if you're like mentoring the next generation is slightly easier because we can relate to it, but not everyone can. So we need to learn those skills. One of the things I do come across, and it sort of echoes, if you like, Cara's challenge at trying to get qualified as you're getting later into your career. But I've recently dealing with a candidate. I said to him, look, you need to go and have a chat with your line manager because they need to give you the space to get qualified. It's not a byproduct. You're not going to do a 60-hour week and suddenly you're going to get qualified. And all he's had from his line manager is, well, I had to deal with it. And this was fed back to me, and I went, I don't think he did. I actually see people at Cara's level now with a lot more responsibility than I was at my career. So actually that whole journey of working and trying to get qualified, I think there's even more pressure on people. And of course, again, if you're really capable, people are going to give you lots of work because they see you as a capable individual, and that puts even more pressure on you in terms of finding that space, that head space and that physical space to actually sit down and do your self-study and get your head around what's required to get ready for the APC. So we need to understand that people on different journeys and they react differently, and actually giving people that space. But I said that the 20% off the job learning that we've talked about, that is the starting point to people giving them that headspace, and we just need to recognise as employers that is a requirement of the apprenticeship routes, regardless of what sort of course you're doing, and we need to do that, and we need to just get used to this is the new normal. And again, because if you're in a position where you're not at college again, what do you mean you're doing some self-study? People are not going to be, you'll get qualified and then you go, thanks very much, I'm off, because you've not really helped me. I've had to do it all myself. So, supporting development is both a strong pull factor, as we've said, but it's also a strong push factor if you're not giving the support that's needed.
Excellent. And for those individuals who are perhaps interested in surveying apprenticeships, who can they turn to for more information and guidance? Are there any specific organisations or resources?
RICS should have a list of the universities that offer the apprenticeships. And again, depending on where you are, and depending how you want to do it, I mean, I do come across people whose actually apprenticeship is actually I've moved away from home and I've got a job and I'm living somewhere else. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're confined to what's nearest to me. And I would start there. But yes, you need to look at the difference between the two and what suits you. Because I said an apprenticeship is not for everyone. Not everyone is necessarily super committed to a surveying degree, in which case you might do a standard undergraduate course in surveying, and then you might make a decision about, well, yeah, I've now done the course. Actually, this is what I want to do. So you've got to find that balance. But the RICS, and there are other, Lionheart can give you some advice and guidance. There are some centralized websites where you can look up job opportunities as well, and your local careers advisors as well.
Excellent. And I guess finally, for both of you, so you can take it in turns, Cara, if you want to go first, ladies first, what advice would you give to someone considering a career in surveying and thinking about pursuing an apprenticeship?
I would say go for it in 2 short words or 3 short words. I think it's like I say, don't underestimate the commitment. However, if you're not interested in going to uni full time, you're not sure what you want to do as a career, surveying is a perfect place to start. It's got so many transferable skills. Like Stuart said, even if you weren't to stay with surveying, there's so much that you'll gain from doing an apprenticeship anyway. So I'd say if you're considering it, definitely research it. Go and speak to the universities. Approach employers if there's some adverts out for apprenticeships. And yeah, give it a shot.
Excellent. Stuart, same question.
What I would say to people as well is how organised are you? So this is a juggling act. So to use a phraseology from one of my old partners at my firm, it's this adage of plate spinning. You've got to keep lots of plates spinning. So you've got to keep your academic studies, your APC studies, and your work commitment going. Take the opportunity to learn from that. A very piece of advice that stuck with me that I was given very early on, actually when I went to my first degree, was that somebody said to me, Stuart, we all waste time. And this guy was absolutely right. If you look at every day and every week, we waste time. Now, if you're somebody who's disorganized and lurch from one crisis to the next, maybe the apprenticeship route is not ideal for you until you adjust your behaviors. But if you work it out, one of the simplest piece of advice I get to say to people is just get up early. Get up early and start your work early, and particularly around the self-study. I say to people, go to the office an hour early, do your study, do your work, go home, every evening's yours. And I said, that way you're building up your study, or you go in and you do your college work early. One top bit of advice, if you're going to do that, because not everyone's got a home environment where you can work, but if you're going to go to the office, I came across a management technique called How to Be an Office Ninja, and it was 9 or 10 principles about how to be more efficient, but one of them is hiding. And I tell people this story and they think, well, what do you mean hiding? And I went, the whole point is that if we get interrupted when we're doing something, it can take you a long time to get back up. So if you're going to come into the office and you're genuinely going to do an hour study, and then you're going to, don't do it at your desk, because the minute your boss turns up, they go, oh, Cara, how are you? Oh, I'm glad you're in early because we've got a phone call. Can you start this measurement for me? And it's like, hang on, I've got another 25 minutes before work starts. So the whole principle of hiding, so book out a meeting room or go somewhere else. You need to find ways to be efficient. But I said these are skills that you develop that help you in your work career, because when we go in as Cara's found, you don't get given one job to do. You get given 3 or 4 jobs. You get given 3 or 4 jobs where the employer treats you like you're working for them full time. You need to give them the impression that you're giving them 5 days a week, when actually the fee's probably only covering a day and a half. And you've got to balance things up. So this is what you're going to be asked to do, and a way of working when you're actually up and running as a surveyor. Then learn those skills as part of that journey in terms of getting your degree and getting qualified.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll all be Googling now how to become a ninja in the office, because I'm definitely going to look that one up. So perfect.
Remember, hiding.
I'm going to start hiding. Chris will be chasing me down. But there you go. So thank you, everybody. As I mentioned earlier, and browse our questions on Reachback. There's over 7,000 questions. You might find something useful there. Also, if you head over to our website, we've got a library of construction-based courses, which are part of our online subscription for construction professionals. And we've also got a number of free resources on our website, white papers, templates, really useful stuff. And then that just leaves me to thank Stuart and Cara once again for their expertise and valuable insights. I think we definitely all learned something, and it's given us all food for thought. And finally, thank you all for listening. We do hope you enjoyed our webinar. If you did, we'd really appreciate you taking a few moments to leave us some feedback. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you again on the next one. Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.